Happy Halloween, Buff fans! Troy and I are back with another episode of CU Sports Report, a quite spooky one. I love Halloween. Unfortunately, I won't be able to do anything tonight because I have work, but I hope everyone has a really great Halloween and we have much to discuss. Colorado beat Cincinnati in pretty complete and dominant game. Really gave 5-2 Cincinnati the works in Boulder on offense and defense, and they just didn't have a lot of answers. We have some hoops talk. We have some recruiting news of this big recruiting weekend where five-star quarterback Julian Lewis was in town, as we all saw on Twitter, and he's hanging out with four-star offensive tackle Carde Smith, both still committed to USC, both still locked in. But I do have some quotes and information from them as the news trickled out this week. So I guess we'll start with some recruiting news. We'll get into that and get that out of the way, and everything that people want to hear, and then we'll get into the game and the nitty gritty because Troy has all the X's and O's for us on what happened schematically and more. So, over the weekend, we filmed this Thursday, and then that Friday, the 25th, Colorado got a commitment from three-star defensive tackle Christian Hudson. He has kind of been on the radar ever since Colorado played UCF. He decommitted. There's interest. The Buffs pursued him, and lo and behold, he committed. So great acquisition from the Buffs. He's had a lot of production in his high school career, and seems like now the Buffs are really great at developing pass rushers, and we're seeing young guys like Tajay McCoy take a second step and really being productive in the pass rush. Another commitment that happened on Saturday, four-star wide receiver Adrian Wilson. He backed up his commitment to ASU, and then shortly after he visited Colorado that week, and boom, commitment landed from Adrian Wilson, who is a really talented wide receiver. I need to check his ranking, but I'll come back to that. Circle back. And now with those two commitments, the 2025 class has 10 commitments, is currently ranked 72nd in the Rivals team rankings. So Deanna the Buffs doing the most to build for the future here. And nothing would be more, I think, show-stopping than flipping Julian Lewis, which was, I've never seen Julian Lewis in person, but it was cool to see him taking it all in. And it was a really, I feel like even when we were in school and Colorado was not good, the fan base was always showing up to games and still continuing that, a sold-out game in Boulder. The atmosphere was great. From national recruiting analyst Adam Gorney, quote from a source in Julian Lewis camp. He said it was a really good trip. They have a really good game day environment, and there wasn't a lot of information giving out on what Lewis thought, like additional information there. But from Gorney, he definitely thinks that there is some intrigue in Colorado following Shedeur Sanders' footsteps and play for Pat Shurmur, but there are still some questions at who's going to be at receiver. What's that going to look like next year? But the Colorado did make a really good impression on a really important player that they've been pursuing for a while. It's his fourth trip at Colorado. And it seems like there, especially with this last trip, there's a lot of positive progress there that Colorado is certainly, probably it's just USC and Colorado in the mix now for Julian Lewis. Also, Carde Smith, speaking of USC, he spoke more on his second visit to CU, and he said, they want me bad. They've been pushing for me ever since they offered me, and ever since then, it has been amazing. They've been reaching out at least once a week. Colorado very persistent of the offensive tackle, and I mean, who wouldn't want to play next to five-star left tackle Jordan Seaton, who's had a monster season so far and has been a star on the offensive line. And Jordan Seaton commented, Carde Smith posted his pictures from the weekend of him dressed up with Buff gear. And Jordan Seaton commented on his social media post and said, future teammates with the eye emoji. Intriguing. There's certainly a flip target there. There's been a lot of talk with Carde's involvement in CU discourse, getting Carde to become a Buff. But in the recruitment world, anything can happen. And I think with Lewis and Smith, CU is in a good spot for both of them for potential flips. However, I don't know when specifically we could be seeing that. There's a lot of like smoke after recruitment visits, and when the dust settles, more things come alive. So,
It's
but
awful.
yeah, good progress there. With it'd be really great to get Julian Lewis too. He could be the future quarterback of Colorado, and every year since Deion Sanders has been a head coach, CU or Jackson State, he's acquired a 5-star. So can Julian Lewis be that 5-star? Potentially. Elite 4-star wide receiver CJ Wiley. He's one of the top uncommitted prospects in the Rivals 250. A lot of schools are pursuing him, such as Georgia, LSU, Texas A&M, Auburn, and Colorado. They're all pursuing him, hoping to get his verbal commitment. They're really building up this wide receiver room. But so far, Colorado putting in a lot of work to build their 2025 class. So far, it's like I said, they have 10 commitments, and last weekend was certainly their biggest recruiting weekend of the season with Julian Lewis taking a trip. And yeah, we posted, Nigel took a picture of Lewis and Carde Smith together, and
Really good
Rivals
picture.
posted it. Yeah, it was a great picture. Shout out Nigel. He does every graphic, every photo you see of CU is his work. Um, Rivals posted that picture of Lewis and Smith together, and Lewis reposted it on his story. So I don't know. There's a lot of Colorado conversations happening with Julian Lewis now, but not a lot of information coming from his camp. All we know, it was a good visit, and he enjoyed his time uh, in the Buffs. And like I said, great game day environment. Always good to see that. I saw Cardi Smith talking with everyone on the sideline, and yeah, positive trip. The recruiting news there. Um, that's all I have for I think this week. Let's hop into Cincinnati, an A15 game. Drink coffee before. I've been drinking coffee before those games, and it actually has been helping me a lot staying awake. But this game was exciting enough for me to be locked in. Troy and I were up in the press box breaking down different coverages and what the Buffs are doing well. I mean, the run game looks sufficient. The wide receivers, of course, were operating in every capacity. It just looked like Shador was absolutely tearing up their defense. I mean, you had that 4th and 1 stop, which was probably one of the biggest defensive stops of the game. Immediately, Colorado gets the ball back and scores with a 34-yard touchdown, Shador to Travis Hunter to end the half. And it seemed like Colorado just took a lot of wind out of their sails early. I guess we'll start on the offensive side of the ball. There are so many positives of this game. Travis posted another 153 yards and 2 touchdowns in this game and 9 catches. He is just such a spectacle. But from the box, from your observations, what do you think Colorado really capitalized on the offense side of the ball on Saturday?
Yeah, the story of this one is Isaiah Gustave and the running game as a whole. This felt like the game where Pat Shurmur and I kind of got the sense of this talking to Pat yesterday as well. This felt like the game where Pat Shurmur and the CU offense kind of settled on who they want to be in the running game and kind of
Mm-hmm.
everything kind of came together. This isn't an explosive running game. That's not who Isaiah Gustave is. That's not who CU is. That's not who they need or want him to be. Um, but he gets downhill. It's efficient. It's an efficient running game. And they're doing a lot of different stuff to stay ahead of the sticks. They were mixing in a lot of zone with some tackle pull stuff that was really nice. They were pulling guards a lot, which was nice. Just giving the defense different looks. They ran a couple of crack tosses, which um, that was a nice wrinkle out of the shotgun when every time you line up in the shotgun and you hand it off, the running back is almost always coming across the quarterback, right? So then when you mix in the crack toss, it's a tendency breaker. You run to the same side as the back.
Mm-hmm.
The receivers did not block either one of the crack tosses very well. So that's an area of improvement. But it feels like that Shermer's really starting to get a feel for when to call what, and how to keep this offense moving on the ground. And Augusta is really impressive. I think that I would be really surprised if he was not the guy moving forward. I know they've said it changes week in and week out, but he's a really, really good back for this offense. He gets downhill right away. He's patient in the hole. He's not going to sit there and just hammer into the back of the offensive lineman. He's going to let the play develop. He always falls forward, which is really impressive. He's a big-bodied back, and he almost always falls forward for extra yards. And he makes the first guy miss a lot. He forced 10 missed tackles in this game, which is a ton on, I think he had what, 22 carries, 22
Mm-hmm.
carries?
22.
10 missed tackles is a ton of
Yeah,
missed
it's a
tackles.
lot.
Uh, so he's creating a lot of yards himself too, in addition to the offensive line. It is blocking stuff up a lot better in the running game. So I've just been really impressed with him. I was less impressed with him at the beginning of the season. Obviously, he had the fumble against CSU. But the last couple weeks he's been really, really impressive, and I think that he's kind of given Pat Shurmur and the CU offense like a security blanket of some sorts in the running game.
Yeah, and that was something that we're certainly missing. It was his third straight game with a rushing touchdown and a season high 91 yards. And yeah, as you said, he was just kind of running physical hard all night to really opening up the run game and moving the chains. I felt, I think we all felt more secure with him running the ball. The more he got involved with the game, the more positive yardage we were seeing. He had a long of 13 yards, and he was averaging 4.1 yards per carry, which is good and what you want to see. I think it's as week after week we're seeing more momentum. Of course, against Kansas State, negative 29 yards plus, all the sacks that Shador absorbed. It's There's been so much disruption in the backfield throughout this season, but within the last few games against Arizona and Cincinnati, who present fronts that, aren't very formidable, they've been able to establish themselves, and it's shown that Shador's having a clean pocket, as well as the running game is getting going with back-to-back 100-yard games, as well as back-to-back games with only one sack. I think we talked about it with Shador and the offensive line after the game. They're breaking this pattern of allowing 2 or less sacks, and then immediately following the next game, they allow 5 or more. And this was the first time this season that they've had 2 consecutive games where it hasn't exceeded 5. Um, the coverage has been from the eye is a lot more sustainable than what we've seen in past weeks. Of course, it's all about what that front is presenting. Cincinnati does have some quality pass rushers with Jared Barlett, but they've really allowed Shador to have an exceptional game, 323 yards, 2 touchdowns, and completed 25 of 30, which is 83%.
Pretty good.
Yeah, no, pretty good. I may
Yeah.
say.
Yeah.
it was it was just one of those games where you could really see the offense operating as a whole, and it's that mid-season form mentality, like you said. It feels like Shermer knows what he wants to call now, what worked with his offense, what weaknesses they have, and how to mitigate that a little bit. And we talked to him yesterday, as you said, and kind of this quote that I pulled from him, and he said the other night we used 4 wideouts. We used 4 wideouts with Draylon Miller as the running back, which the defense appears like 5 wideouts. We used 11 personnel. We used 12 personnel, 1 running back and 2 tight ends. We used 2 halfbacks and 3 wides, and so it's just more variables for the defense. And as Pat Shurmur said, there is more variety. There's more creativity. There's not after the USC game, defensive coordinator Ted Roof said they looked like a completely different team. And I feel like that game was a pivotal moment to where they were able to open up and try a little bit different things, use more of that 11 personnel, incorporate their tight ends more. And now as they're getting more comfortable, we're seeing a more efficient offense. They went from the first 4 games, Colorado averaged 26.8 points per game. In the last 4 games, they've been averaging 36 points per game. So a big jump, and now that we've reached this part of the season, there's more comfortability within the offense, and I feel like everyone has a trust with one another and understands their assignment on what this offense actually is going to look like. So a lot of great progress there, and good to have this momentum as they reach the final stretch to the November stretch of the season. It gets cold outside. Texas Tech, Texas Tech, Utah, Kansas, Oklahoma State. Yeah, yeah.
which looks a
So,
lot better now than it did at the beginning of the season. At the
oh,
beginning of the season, it was like, God, look at this stretch at the end of the year. Now it's like,
yeah. Money Parks, I saw suffered a season-ending injury.
they have had a season from hell is what they call it, right?
Yeah.
Nothing but which they also had last year. So
Yeah, without Cam Rising, do you think he's gonna go for his, is it eighth or ninth season
it would be
eligibility?
eight. He's
Oh.
eligible. He can take a red shirt, I believe.
Mm,
He's eligible. I don't know if uh if if he's going to.
we'll
I
see.
think I like that'll be an interesting thing to watch. This we don't need to go obviously in depth on
Yeah.
this. They like Wilson.
Side tangent.
Wilson was a big recruit, and obviously he's gotten reps as a freshman. So that'll be an interesting thing to watch.
Yeah, and most likely it'll be Wilson that the Buffs are facing in the coming weeks because
Yes.
Cam is
They did
not
both.
healthy and wasn't this whole season. Defense, as I mentioned, that fourth and one stop, they read it immediately. I think was it Nikai Hill Green that got the
Yeah, he
stuff.
was in there. Cam was in there.
Mm-hmm.
Who was the defensive tackle on that play? I cannot remember. I got to go back and watch it again. Um, but yeah, that was a really impressive play. I wrote that down because that's a sign of coaching right there. We saw it all year. Teams go. We said Baylor did it 100 times. It felt like K-State did a little bit, but teams go into empty in short yardage situations because they're trying to spread you out so they can run the quarterback. Baylor ran it the exact same situation with Sawyer Robertson and on 4th and 2 or 4th and 1 from basically the same spot on the field, and it was a 45-yard touchdown. So for CU to key on that and pick up on that, um, it is a sign of really good coaching and really good leadership on that side of the ball, that they kind of diagnose that, and they're learning as the year goes on, which is what you want to see.
Yeah, and Cam Stillman-Craig, probably the star of the show on Saturday with 8 tackles, 1 sack, 2 tackles for loss. He had was involved on that fourth and one stop, as well as the singular sack of the game for a loss of 4 yards on 3rd and 10. Their third down defense was really, really good. I wish I had a better adjective, but good is the one I'm running with now. They went 3 of 10 Cincinnati on third down. They were just completely unable to convert, and they went 1 and 3 on fourth down. They just kept the Buffs kept Cincinnati behind the chains all night, and they just couldn't. Even their playmakers, Xavier Henderson, who was their leading wide receiver, only had 1 catch for 11 yards. And similarly to Arizona, they kept Tutori McMillan very, very limited in those games. And this week we saw similar tendencies of that. Corey Kiner, their running back, was probably their most efficient on the ground, 17 carries, 94 yards. But Cincinnati was only able to get into the end zone a handful of times. They didn't score in the third quarter. And then in the fourth quarter, it looked kind of interesting. It's like, okay, where is this game going to go? But luckily, the Buffs got into the end zone and they scored in every quarter of the game with that field goal, that 47-yard field goal by Mata. I was there at the end zone too, and it just excuse me, it just like skimmed the the field
It,
goal.
it just barely made it, man.
But it made it. It made it, and it was like I said, an all around great game from the Buffs. But what they
He got the
did,
laces. He got the laces on that, I believe.
yeah, he did. He
He got the
said even
laces.
after the game, he
Um,
was like, that wasn't. He's like, I apologize, like that wasn't my best kick, and the fans deserve better. But he made it, so can't ask for more than that. For just the Buffs defense, we talked with Robert Livingston on yesterday, of course. I keep saying yesterday. That they like to play a lot of man, and their emphasis on man this season has definitely played in their advantage. Sometimes it's not, but at least on Saturday, what did you see in that coverage, and did you see any changes in those man fronts, and what really worked for them in getting holding Cincinnati to 23 points.
I don't think there was like changes, like drastic changes. I don't think that CU really, I don't, I don't know how else to say this other than that I don't think they really respected Cincinnati's ability to throw the ball down the field. Um, because they challenged them. They really challenged them. Ton of press man, kind of more like what we saw at the beginning of the season. Some cover two and some stuff like that in there too, like they've been doing lately. But when the money downs came, uh, Robert Livingston bet on his guys on the outside to hold up, and there was nobody open. There was just nobody open like for
Yeah.
most of the night. Brandon Sorsby finished 16 for 30, which is not very good, but there was nobody open. He made some bad throws,
Mm-hmm.
especially underneath, leaving balls behind guys at times. But I thought it was a super impressive performance from this CU secondary to just hold up on the outside over and over and over and over again. They blew one coverage and man coverage on, I think, the second drive. Another running back coming out of the backfield on a wheel, which is going to continue to be a thing that teams are going to call until CU shows that they are going to cover it. Um, so that's something to watch moving forward in matchup specific things. But the corners were phenomenal. I mean, the Preston Hodge was excellent. DJ McKinney was excellent. He had a big third down pass breakup on, I believe it was the first drive. Preston Hodge has the interception, which got called back for pass interference that
Crazy.
it was I see what they saw, but like, come on.
I was
Um,
also thinking about it too. Speaking of penalties and Jimmy Horn's peace sign touchdown.
that's ridiculous.
Um, Dylan Edwards did the same thing at TCU. Nigel took pictures of it of him. It was his 75-yard touchdown, flashing a peace sign, and he didn't call back. I don't know if it's like a Texas thing and they let people play down there, but that
It
was a
depends on the
ridiculous call.
it depends on the crew. It depends on whether the crew deems that as taunting, which it should not be. These kids are, I mean, come on.
It could be a middle finger, but it's
We're
not.
we're playing competitive Division One college football. We can't let the like, come on. That is so ridiculous that is a penalty, and it sucks because since it happens before he goes in the end zone, then it's a spot foul instead of an after the play. So that's I
Yeah.
every time I hate taunting as a rule in general. Who
Yeah.
cares if people are
It's
taunting?
a
But
game. It's supposed
that's
to be
my
fun.
that's my soapbox is that taunting should not be a rule. You should be allowed to taunt. You should be allowed to talk crap to people. Um, but back to the defense. Yeah, the secondary was really good. Travis Hunter had 4 PBUs in this game, which
Yeah,
is
career high
just unbelievable.
in a
That
game.
that it 4 PBUs does not seem like a lot for one corner to get 4 PBUs in a game. That is a ton. That
Yeah.
is consistently being disruptive, and almost every time that the ball, I wonder if I can pull this up really fast. Almost every time that the ball is thrown in your direction, you are making a play. Travis Hunter was targeted. Here we go. Travis Hunter was targeted 6 times,
Oh.
and he had 4 PBUs.
Wow.
That is incredible. That is unbelievable.
Yeah,
Um,
he set career highs in receiving yards too,
yeah,
153. And
yeah.
yeah, those
So
four pass breakups.
the secondary was really really good. Like you mentioned, I have stuff up front too, but I would like to hear your take on the front seven and the pass rush and kind of how they did against the run, and then I'll go.
Well, I think ultimately, as I kind of mentioned, their third down defense was extremely, extremely efficient on Saturday, and that was highly due to the pass rush. I think, in previous game, from going to an Arizona game where they set a game high 7 sacks to a game where they only got 1 sack, there wasn't as much disruption in the front, and as we kind of maybe anticipated, because Cincinnati's offensive line is really good. They're one of the best in the Big 12. There isn't a lot of exposure on the quarterback. There isn't a lot of gaps, but they were able to, get some positive stoppage on Brendan Sorsby. Containment was efficient on him, of course, as you mentioned, secondary, but we're talking about the front. Um, I think the run game was, 171 yards. It's not high, it's not low. I think it's good just allowing one rushing touchdown and not letting Brendan Sorsby, as you mentioned, going back to the Baylor game, allowing a quarterback to just find their hole and run. They've done a lot better in the last two games, just limiting the ground game when it comes to running quarterback. And Brendan Sorsby does like to run. They're a really balanced team on paper, and even in the game, they had 180 pass yards, 171 rushing yards. So I think the defense in the front did an exceptional job of just keeping Cincinnati behind the chains, and Corey Kiner was, the most efficient. And I think just overall, he was going to be maybe the star of the show, especially with the way that the secondary was playing. They had no other option to run. And of course, they got some, positive gains out of him. Corey Connor had his longest of the evening was 23 yards, and Brendan Sorsby had a 21-yard run as well. So there's instances like that where there were some missed assignments in those fronts. But overall, Colorado was just not allowing them to advance the ball. Really, I don't really not much on Saturday. So yeah, I also want to talk about Travis Hunter Heisman conversation. But when you saw the front, it wasn't quite the same as I said as Arizona, but I think it was sufficient to in order to get the job done. So what did you see from that front?
Yeah, you mentioned the pass rush. And the pass rush was not really as effective in this one, kind of as we expected coming in. That's one of the strengths of Cincinnati. Sorsby was only pressured 6 times on 35 dropbacks, which you would like to see more than that, even against a good offensive line. But when your secondary plays so well, that's complementary football. One part of the unit doesn't have it, the other one does. I also thought Cincinnati did some really nice stuff to kind of keep Sorsby clean, moving the pocket, a lot of quick game stuff. They also 35 dropbacks is a little bit misleading. There's a lot of RPOs in there that they ran. Um, so it's not the greatest game for the front, but I'm not. I don't think it's an alarm bell
Yeah.
by any means. Against the run, it's interesting. I thought Cincinnati's interior offensive line was very, very, very good. I thought they played really, really well in the run game. I talked a lot earlier in the year. The CSU game this stuck out, the UCF game this stuck out about how CU's defensive tackles were really controlling the line of scrimmage. Getting into the backfield, getting off blocks. They really weren't able to do that at all in this game. Um, and Cincinnati was kind of able to move them around and find those creases in the middle in the running game because of that. I have noticed one thing with the interior defensive line that's interesting. I talked before, or I talked after the Kansas State game about how CU's defensive tackles like to come upfield. They like to get upfield. They get 2, 3, 4 yards into the backfield. Kansas State kind of flipped that on them. And since then, they haven't really been doing that. It's been more about, hey, can we eat blocks? Can we eat double teams and let the linebackers kind of run around and make the plays? And this game, they did do that pretty well. The interior, the linebackers were able to run free for a lot of the night. Nakai Hill-Green is just every single week is one of my favorite players to watch. Every
Mm-hmm.
time I watch a play, and I go, oh my God, who was that? It was usually Nakai. I go back and it's usually Nakai Green. That guy just flies around. He is everywhere.
Yeah.
Wherever the football is, he is. Which is that's what you want
He
in a
also had a pass breakup.
yeah. Yeah, he batted one down early on, right?
Yeah.
Early in the game.
And two tackles for loss. But yeah, 8 pass breakups total
He
for the
flies
Bucs
around.
defense.
That guy flies around. He really does. He's a lot of fun to watch. So The front seven, there's a lot of stuff that they can work on. I mentioned it, pass rush. I also think their rush lanes, like you mentioned, the long run that Sorsby had, that was a play. CU was in their kind of five-man rush package that they go to on third downs in
Hmm.
passing situations where they put pretty much all the pass rushers out there. They put Keaton Wade out there, BJ Green, Okunlola's out there, Tajay's out there. They're all out there. But on that play, their rush lanes were bad. They got out of their rush lanes, which makes sense when you've got five pass rushers trying to just get after the quarterback, and you end up with guys who usually play on the edge playing inside. But they left like Sorsby just escaped up the middle, and there was nobody there.
Hmm.
So that was, a minor thing, and then there was some poor tackling on that play as well. Um, but that's not like a huge deal. It was just interesting. It's interesting. It's something to watch when they go to that package on third and longs, especially against
Hmm.
running quarterbacks. Um, so, not the best night from the front seven, but I think they did their job. Especially down the stretch. A lot of the rushing yards too came at the like in the fourth quarter when CU was kind of went into prevent mode with the big
Hmm.
lead, and Cincinnati kind of ran the ball down the field on them. But secondary was great. Overall, a solid day for the defense. Did what was asked and did just enough to get the job done.
Yeah, really didn't provide Cincinnati's offensive coordinator Tom Manning a lot of answers. Really, I think as we've every week, I always just tip my cap to Robert Livingston and the job that he's done building this defense. And it went from one of the worst FBS defenses last year to now, I don't know their total defense off the top of my head, but much significantly better from last year. The bar was really low, so he
They
exceeded expectations. Okay, quick Travis Hunter Heisman conversation. He was miss a couple second halves with that shoulder, but kind of putting him out in the last couple weeks and just the betting odds. But this past week, he skyrocketed back up after setting career highs in pass breakups and receiving yards with 153. His odds, he's now plus 250 behind Dylan Gabriel, who's plus 240 right now. And
I have a
I
take
think
on
especially after the game, that
I have
was
a
just
take
such a
on it.
prominent conversation of, what does the Heisman mean? Why isn't it just Travis Hunter, like the undisputed favorite from he's doing things that players haven't done in decades, even like Charles Woodson. There hasn't been a player that has played this many snaps and has been this involved on both sides of the ball in history. There's been guys that have done, maybe 30-70 split, but this is completely 50-50 with Travis. And it's something that is just an anomaly in college football. Every game that I watch him, I'm like, oh my god, what a pleasure it is to watch this, his like generational athlete do the things that he does. And with his performance on Saturday, he definitely interjected himself back into the Heisman conversation. And
Totally.
I think just for me, I don't, maybe it's just like the bias, but Genty really, a really impressive running performance that is definitely Heisman worthy. But when you see everyone else and you see Travis is in like a category of his own of things that have never been done in college football. And I feel like for that reason, it's like, why wouldn't he just be the Heisman favorite and like not automatic, but like in New York, just win the Heisman because he is, in my eyes, the only player that is the best player in college football. Do you agree?
Yeah, this should be a two-horse race right now. I cannot um because Genty's numbers are so insane that it would be wrong not to put him in the race, and Boise State is probably going to make the playoff at this point. And then Travis, obviously, you mentioned it. He's doing all of these incredible things on both sides of the ball every week. We just mentioned career high in receiving yards and PBUs in the same game is ridiculous. Can we please Please, please, please not do the best quarterback on the best team thing. Please, please. Why? Why does that have to be a thing for every award every single year? I like Dylan Gabriel. Dylan Gabriel's a good player. He's a good quarterback. I like Dylan Gabriel. He is not, he should not be in the Heisman running right now. Cam Ward, I could be talked into a little bit more, but he's a distant third to me in this race right now. The Dylan Gabriel thing, I do not understand how, I don't understand how you could look at this season and have Travis Hunter doing so many things on both sides of the ball, erasing half of the field on defense while being one of the best receivers in the country on offense. And you could have Genty, who is carrying this Boise State offense every single week, running for like 200 some yards a game. And you could still say, oh, best quarterback on the best team. He gets the
Yeah.
award. That is absolutely ridiculous. That is ridiculous. Just make it a best team award then. Just give it to the team that's ranked. Give it to the team that's ranked number one. You know what that's called? That's called the national championship. They play games for that. We don't need to vote on who's the best team. We're voting for the best player, the most outstanding player. That right now is easily either Travis Hunter or Ashton Genty. Make your case, but for Dylan Gabriel, with all due respect, because Dylan Gabriel's a very, very good quarterback. He's playing very, very good football this season. But for to put him in the same realm as the otherworldly things that those two guys are doing is just ridiculous.
It's a
So
hard sell.
this
It's
should be a
definitely a
two
hard sell
horse
for
race.
me too.
There's I anyone who says that, I will say explain Dylan Gabriel, why Dylan Gabriel is the Heisman favorite to me without bringing up his team's record or their rank, because there's no that I could not believe that when I saw it the other day. To Dylan Gabriel, though, very good quarterback, but
Travis Hunter for Heisman. Hopefully it'll be New York. We'll see. TBD on that. But Travis is definitely back in action in the Heisman conversation, healthy, and Colorado really having an incredible season, bowl eligibility, and the most wins since 2016. The Buffs are winning for the first time that we haven't seen in our college days, and I'm glad that we both get to enjoy it a little bit out of college and see just the evolution of Colorado football under Deion Sanders. And last year was the foundational season, and this year is the season of expectations. And getting 6-2 for a team that was just so ass for so long is something that should be really celebrated. And we talk about the Deion
uh,
Sanders and stuff, but this is something that I don't think I could have fathomed. Definitely back in the day, something that I didn't envision. It seemed like Colorado was on this steady pace of just being pretty neutral and hanging out, but now in conversation for a Big 12 championship and a bowl game. It's very exciting and makes our jobs a lot better. So, basketball, we'll do some quick basketball notes. We've been talking for a while, as we
season
do.
starts Monday.
Yeah,
Monday.
Troy will be there. They're playing Eastern Washington. First game of the season, and then their non-conference schedule continues from there. But this team was projected to finish 15th in the Big 12 preseason coaches poll, which when you see this team outwardly, it's like, okay, they lost, 60%, if not, seems like all of their shooting. They three guys to the draft, three, their top six rotation players just no longer on the team. That's completely dissipated. And the only turnover that came were bench guys like Javon Ruffin, Julian Hammond, Bangkok Dax, and just young stars that are now taking on bigger roles because the Buffs need it. Of course, they added Andre Yakumovsky from Washington State, who in practice looks like the best guy on the floor. But Elijah Malone and Trevor Baskin are also transfers in that had a lot of production in their D2, D3 schools. Trevor Baskin finished fifth on the all time scoring list and was he's going to provide Colorado with a lot of the shooting that they've missed. Even though he played at this Division II level, Tad has certainly a knack of developing, these D2 guys into D1 guys. And as Boyle said, I think it was on Basketball Media Day a couple Mondays ago, he just said, about Trevor, like, if you can play, like, you can play. It doesn't matter where you came from or what title you had prior. He was a really productive player, and highly sought out when he entered the transfer portal. And he had career high in points, 18.2 per game, rebounds, 8.3, and a 3-point percentage, 36.5, and assists, 3.9 last season. He had his most productive year and really made a statement for himself to show that he can participate and he can play well in the power four. I interviewed him, yeah, last week. He's great. He's so fun. He's just like this like energetic person. He's kind of like this guy that can. He's really good on defense. He said he can guard 1 through 5, and of course he is known for his shooting and was brought to Colorado for his shooting ability as well. Someone that I think we've been talking a lot about this offseason is Bangkok Dak. Last year, he just averaged 1.7 points per game and was coming off the bench. I feel like the minutes and the opportunities didn't allow him to maybe show him, and maybe he wasn't ready for the moment. Yeah, it wasn't allow him to show his full, realm of skills. And now that the team is in need of players and contributors, Bangkok Dak is looking to be one of the best players on the court. I talked to Evan Batty during the media day, and he said he's one of the most talented players I've ever been around playing or coaching. And that's definitely a high accolade you can get from the mayor of Boulder and the Buffs. And I think you see it too on the floor. He's more decisive this year. He led the Pomona Pitzer exhibition with 16 points. He's a high scorer. He's good in the post. He has a lot of length. He's a really good shot blocker, and that's something that Tad Boyle mentioned. He's really one of the best, quote, one of the best shot blockers I've ever coached. So Bangkok Dak stock, even John Rosenthal said it, you got to buy stock now because he's going to be a key contributor here. When you see the Buffs, they've lost a lot, and it doesn't seem bright being projected 15th, but do you really think they are the 15th team in the Big 12? And what what are some of the positives that you're seeing from this roster that you're like, okay, they're going to be pretty good?
Yeah, it's a lot of unknowns right now, right? The cupboard is pretty bare after last year, and they've kind of had to piece it together with these guys from a year ago that had smaller roles, and then some of these transfers from lower levels that you mentioned. But these are the teams that Tad Boyle usually overachieves with, right? And I'm not saying they're going to be like amazing or they're going to be, competing in the Big 12, but it's hard for me to imagine a Tad Boyle team finishing 15th in a 16 team conference. Now, could it be 12th? Could it be 11th? That's more, I think, in the range where I would expect them to finish. Um, so if that's optimistic, then I'm optimistic. If you think that that's an optimistic prediction, then I guess I'm optimistic because I think that the floor with Tad teams is usually pretty high, especially teams that are uh less talented like this one is than they were last year. I'm excited about Bangkok Dak. You hit on it. He was one of the guys that I was really impressed with down the back half of last year. He started to get more minutes. Really high motor, affects the game on both ends. He's very active. He can finish above the rim, catch lobs. Um, this is true about him and Asan Jope. They both have good feel as passers for guys that are their size. So I think that CU can kind of tap into that with both of them a little bit. I think that the you asked what the strength was, what is kind of impressive. I think that the skilled size is going to be what CU needs to kind of lean into a little bit. You've got Elijah Malone, who can score from all three levels. You've got Bengatek and Hassan Jope, who can finish above the rim. I just mentioned them as passers. You've got Andre Yakmovsky, who can shoot and he can pass and he can kind of take it off the bounce. Same for Trevor Baskin, who you mentioned his scoring accolades before coming to CU. So I think that, and those guys are all big, 6'8", 6'9". Obviously, Dak and Hassan are bigger than that even.
Hmm.
So I think it's not the most athletic team. They don't have a ton of shooters everywhere. They're not going to be like an incredible defensive team, I don't think, on the perimeter at least. We'll see what Bangatek can kind of turn into as a rim protector. But I think that they have a lot of skill from their wings and their bigs on offense that I think they're going to have to kind of lean into that a little bit to kind of unlock the best version of this team.
Yeah, and the big lineup seems that they're leaning into already with Yakmovsky, Joe, Dak, Malone starting four, and then Julian Hammond at the guard. So a lot of size there. I mean, it's an exhibition too, so that might change. And I think Baskin is
He didn't
due
want Pete. He
for a
didn't want Pete to get any layups.
yeah, no,
Put all
no
the big
layups from
guys out
Pete
there.
Boyle.
No layups for Pete. He put all the big guys out there.
But yeah, another new adventure, both on the women's side too. They have 10, they brought in 10 transfers, which is nuts. They brought in 10 transfers, and just from talks with Coach Payne and players, Jade Masego is going to be someone to watch this season. I've asked Frida and I asked Sarah Rose Smith, like, all these new people have come in through practice, like who you're like, damn, like they can play right now, and they all say Jade. I've been able to talk to Jade in practice yet, but she's going to be a key contributor in this team that is also navigating the Big 12 and navigating a completely new roster that has lost all their veterans. So, yeah, that's all for the Buffs, basketball and football. It's the bye week. Happy Halloween again. I'm going to go eat candy, and I made a brownie. I made a brownie the other night. It was so good. Um, Troy's not doing anything spooky. He hates Halloween, so
I'm gonna watch Texans and Jets. I'm gonna force myself to watch the Jets. They put the Jets, Steelers, and Giants in a hat and just pick a name. And like you're in prime time this week. And I'm like, guys, can we please get some different teams, please?
if anyone is interested, I got kicked out of my big survivor pool by picking the Raiders over, no, picking the Ravens over the Raiders that one game. Got kicked out of that pool. I'm now in the second chance pool, and I'm still alive. Hopefully, I didn't just jinx myself, but still alive in my second chance pool. Well, that's all for us. We'll talk to you guys next week with another episode of C Sports Report Podcast. Have a wonderful Halloween, and we'll see you guys next time.